gets him, and finally made it to the end of the first part of Queen of the Damned, which puts us at about the 40% mark. This has been a slog, and look, I remember liking this book when I was 14, 15 years old, but a lot has changed since then in me, in the way, what we expect from books, like, you know, publishing sensibilities, if you will, have changed. And wow. Okay, so where did we leave off? On page 94, which was halfway into Armand and Daniel. And Daniel had been wandering around Chicago, broke and ill, and kind of waiting for Armand to come find him. Armand does finally pull up in a nice car and put Daniel in the car, and they go to the private plane, and it turns out that Armand's like, dude, you have like less than a week to live. You're literally dying right now. And Daniel's like, I know, you know, he's been drinking, he's got like cirrhosis of the liver or whatever. Maybe, I don't know, maybe hepatitis, whatever. He's dying. His alcoholism is killing him. He's kind of gone a little mad from the whole vampire thing. And Armand does finally decide to make Daniel a vampire. Armand has never made a vampire, but he kind of just realizes he does not want to lose Daniel. And honestly, this to me is like, even though it's not a healthy relationship in the least, none of these relationships are healthy in any of these books. But you know, it's the most interesting thing that happens in the whole first part of this book. And maybe it's because we know Armand and we kind of know Daniel, so there's more connection to that part of the story than all these other new characters that are being introduced. Characters that will become important later, or at least semi-important later. I don't know. We get... so anyway, Armand turns Daniel into a vampire. We get very long descriptions of Daniel's visions as he's being turned into the vampire. That is, I think, my chief problem with this book. Is just it's very long-winded. Lestat was too, but it was from Lestat's point of view, and it's his character, and now it just seems like every character is the same amount of long-winded and introspective, and it doesn't feel... It feels very much like an author telling me than characters telling me, because the author's voice is very consistent throughout, which is not necessarily a bad thing, except when you're telling a bunch of different characters' points of view, and they all kind of sound the same because they're all the same level of philosophical, it gets a little bogged down for me. This is obviously all my opinion. So then we get, and then Daniel and Armand are on their way to San Francisco for Lestat's concert. Because Armand recognizes that something bad is happening. He even tells Daniel, this is like the worst possible time to make you a vampire because we're the most vulnerable we've ever been. Some of us are dying. I don't know what's going on. We need to go see Lestat. And off they go. Then we get Cayman. I'm going to say Cayman. I don't 100% know if I'm saying this correctly, like pronouncing it correctly. I've always thought of it as Cayman, and I can't remember if I've ever heard it pronounced. I've never listened to the audiobook or anything, and I don't remember. I've tried to block out the Queen of the Damned movie because it was terrible. So anyway, Cayman, yet another vampire, very ancient. Seems like he was a contemporary of Akasha's, maybe, or like slightly after, but like ancient in vampire terms, and also a little bit like not right in the head. Nipatula, if you want your Cajun, I can't remember if I explained this before, but Nipatula, not all there. Don Satet in his head. He had been underground for a really long time, and like has climbed out. He talks about how he's gone by other names throughout history, like Benjamin and stuff, and he's been homeless and kind of... I don't remember if there was a point to it, except that he knows Akasha, like, personally, and it seems like they're antagonists, and yet there is also a bond of affection. I can't really explain it. But anyway, it's strange. And he flies off into, wherever. I don't know what the point of introducing him now was, except that at some point later he will play a part in what happens. And then we get to Jesse. Now, I remember when I was young, I wanted to be Jesse, okay? Young Jessie Reeves, Jessie short for Jessica. She was orphaned in a car accident. She's 35 now being like 1988 or whatever, but she's 35, or I guess she's 35 at the time of the concert, which would have been when Lestat wrote about it in 1986. Anyway, does it matter? No. Anyway, Jessie, who was orphaned and then kind of taken in by Maharet, and again, that's how I've always pronounced the name in my head. I don't know if that's correct or not, but that's how I'm going to say it. She is a pale woman with long red hair, and yet nobody goes, oh, I'm having all these dreams of these redheaded twins, and Maharet is, well, and Jesse's redheaded too, because the redheaded thing is like a family thing. My cat is trying to get into the closet. Crowley, no! He's a pain. Anyway, Maharet delivers the infant Jessie to cousins in New York, and Jessie is raised by them, and then she gets jetted off to meet other members of the family, the Reeves family in England, and a banking family in Greece. And basically the bottom line is, because the great family is this network of families, and Jessie is part of them, and Maharet kind of, her job is to keep track of them all and keep the family tree and all of these things. And it's all very like, oh, we're all just wealthy old families. It's very, I don't know. Anyway, the thing about Jessie is she's very much a Mary Sue. She's perfect. Everybody loves her. She's got amazing abilities, and she's good at everything, and she's beautiful, and, I guess when I was 14 or 15, I was like, yes, that's what I want to be. And now I'm just like, this is obnoxious. This is just so, again, like, this character has no character, I guess. So anyway, and Jessie spends like a few weeks at a house in Sonoma with Maharet and Mayel. And if you remember Mayel, he's the druid who made Marius into a vampire, and he's a bosom buddy of Maharet's. And it seems like Mayel very nearly turns Jessie into a vampire. And but anyway, Jessie eventually gets tapped by the Talamasca, which is this organization of basically paranormal investigators. I mean, that's the easiest thing, we watch and we are always there kind of thing. And because Jessie is psychic and it can see ghosts and stuff, she has abilities that are useful to them, and she joins the Talamasca. And Maharet is not like super enthusiastic. She's like, they're benign, but they're also kind of useless, and I'm hoping you'll kind of get over this moment in your life and get on with your life, because Jessie was originally like an archaeologist. She was out there doing digs and stuff, some kind of... Anyway, so Jessie joins the Talamasca and eventually gets put on the job of going to New Orleans and finding out more about Louis, Lestat, and Claudia, for the archives, like verifying their existence, even though the Talamasca already really knows that they're real and vampires are real and everything. But the Talamascas, they hoard shit. Okay, so they go and they have like one of Marius's paintings of Armand and all this stuff, and so they send young Jesse out to do this job, and of course something happens. Jesse is able to buy the townhouse in Rue Royale, and she finds Claudia's diary and one of Claudia's dolls and things like that, but then something is stalking her and she gets very sick and has to be sent back to London, and she's desperate to go back and finish the job, but the Talamasca won't let her because it's too dangerous, and they're like, we should have never sent you, you were too young, and so on and so forth. And then Jesse reads the Vampire Lestat and reads about Mael, and it's like, holy. And anyway, now Jesse is ready to go on to Lestat's concert, even though the Talamasca has told her not to go. She's like, sorry, I have to do this. And Maharet has told her not to go. Everybody's telling her not to go, but of course she's going to go anyway. And so things are converging on Lestat's concert. There's a bunch of people headed his way, right? Like, that's the whole first 40% of this book is set up for everybody headed to the concert. We kind of already know what happens at the concert, at least from the end of the Vampire Lestat novel. We know from his point of view what happens, and I assume we will get more other points of view. I honestly don't remember a whole lot about this book, aside from, when I was young I liked it. What I found interesting is that Armand at one point is like, no living person knows his name, and yet the Talamasca absolutely knows his name and even points out that he seems to like this name. It's the only one he ever uses, or some variant thereof, like Amadio Armand, and so I'm like, where did Rashid come from? Then, like, what is this? I know they have changed a lot for the television series. They've tweaked and tinkered and moved things around in time and whatnot. So I'm curious to see how they explain it. If they explain it, if they bother. But anyway, yeah, it's a bit of a slog. Part 2 is All Hallows Eve, which is, it's the concert. We're going to go back to Daniel. Hopefully that's more interesting, although I remember Daniel kind of just loses his tiny little mind. Talk about him like he's my cat. You're out of your tiny little mind. And I guess we'll get, like, other people's points of view, too. At this point, we're like, and then we're going to get more of the twins. If you haven't figured it out, Maharet is one of the redheaded twins. She's been around for forever. And then Mikare, again, don't know if I'm saying it correctly, but I broke it into the Egyptian syllables, Mikare, which is what I guess is like what we're going for with this. It's a hard book to read, is what I'm discovering. It's kind of a slog. And I don't know if it's because my tastes have changed or, like I said, like the publishing industry, the kinds of things. This is the point at which Knopf was not editing Anne Rice as thoroughly because she was popular enough in her own right, and I've worked in publishing. I know the truth of it. At some point, when you know an author's work will sell regardless, you speed up the publishing cycle by doing less editing. A lot of times the authors will demand that they have more say in the editing as well, and you give it to them because you want them to stay with you. This is pre-Witching Hour by a couple of years, but you can definitely see with all of the Talamasca Jesse stuff that Anne was building that story kind of out. So, it's, the building blocks are in there. And I remember liking The Witching Hour, and Lasher was, and then are there more than Witching Hour and Lasher? I'm pretty sure there are. I never read further in that series, and I did not watch the AMC series. If you think I should, if you want to subject me to it, let me know in the comments, and we'll see. I might try one episode just to see. But yeah. So I don't know how much longer it'll take me to read more of this. There are 3 parts, I think. Part 2, All Hallows Eve, and then part 3, As It Was in the Beginning, Is Now, and Ever Shall Be. And that part is pretty long. And then there's Queen of the Damned and World Without End, Amen. So there are 5 parts, but the first part's a big chunk of the book, and the rest of it is a little bit, like part 2 is only this little, so I'll probably read that, and that'll be what we cover next time. Just depending on how long it takes me to get through it. Like, literally, I'm like reading, by the time I got to Jesse, I was reading 5 to 10 pages at a time, because I was like, I can't take it. It's so heavy, it's so description heavy, it's so slow. It's so slow. And you want it to be atmospheric, but there's like a balance between atmosphere and character development, and you backloading all this history that I don't need to know. Like, I don't need to know that she fell in love with her Greek cousin and almost like married him, but then decided not to, and then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter later on in this book at all, and or in the series that I can recall, and I don't think the Greek family ever ends up mattering either, so who cares? I mean, I know that Anne falls in love with her characters. I remember one time she said that Lestat had left her at a Mercedes-Benz dealership on Canal, and I was, to my credit, the first thing that came to my mind was, where is the Mercedes-Benz dealership on Canal Street? Like, I'm familiar with New Orleans. My family's from there. And I was like, where is there a... Never mind that she's just like, Lestat left me. I was just like, where is that? So, I mean, for Anne, her characters really did live for her. Like, they were tangible, real beings. And for a lot of authors, that's true. I mean, for me, to some extent, I know at least at the time that I'm writing them, they are very real to me as well. And then later on, I'm sometimes like, I don't know where that came from. I don't know how and they seem very far away suddenly, and I don't know if that's what she meant by Lestat leaving her. But yeah. So, I think Anne liked to dig in a bit, and wanted to give us she wanted to give her characters full stories. She didn't want to parse it. She wanted to be like, this is them complete. And I can admire that and the depth that she went to, and still think, but you almost just should have done like a case files, like ancillary book, instead of trying to load it all into the actual novel. That's just me. I know a lot of people love this book and love all these books, and I did and do, like, they're a big part of my personal history, my literary history, and so I am enjoying rereading them, even if it seems like I'm going, God, what? Because I am kind of going, God, what? But in a fun way. Anyway, that's it for now. I'll keep working on this. I'm also reading The Tower of Nero, which is the last in the Trials of Apollo. Those are the 2 things I'm working on for now. And we'll just see, where it falls out for my reading. In the meantime, till I see you again, take care.